Neither side seems willing to give an inch. Joining me now to contemplate how close we are to the end of life on Earth is environmental campaigner Donnachadh McCarthy. Donnachadh, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Do you take the position that there's no more debate worth having, that it's a settled deal?
Nobody says there's no more debate worth having. What we are saying is that the vast majority of scientific bodies in the world agree with the current science. Science, as you know, I have a background in science, never says anything is 100% certain. However, the current scientists believe it's above 95% certainty that the burning of fossil fuels is contributing to the global breakdown that's now happening around the world, as we've seen in the last few weeks.
Something, as a non-scientist, that it perplexes me is the idea of net zero, as though we're working towards having no carbon dioxide. Presumably that can't be the objective, because without CO2 there's no plant life and thereby no life.
Sure, as a non-scientist, you have absolutely misunderstood that. The idea of if we eliminated carbon from the atmosphere, we would die. Yeah. There would be no life on Earth. What we are saying is that if we actually throw out 1 million years' worth of carbon every year by burning fossil fuels, and we keep doing that, that 1 million years' worth of carbon added to the planet will cause the planet to heat. It was actually discovered by a scientist called John Tyndall, not far from here in Southwark. In the 1850s, doing science, he found certain gases have a tendency to trap heat. So therefore, and carbon dioxide is one of those, and because we are emitting so much extra carbon into the atmosphere, it's causing this disaster that's now unfolding.
I read over and over again that CO2 lags behind a warming planet by, I keep on seeing 800 years, that the planet warms and then more CO2 is released, so that it's not the CO2 that's warming the planet, but that the planet is becoming warmer for some other reason, and that releases off gases more CO2. Is that wrong?
That's a theory, but the facts are, John Tyndall discovered that if you add carbon dioxide, it traps heat. It's a basic physical fact.
Although the planet might be warmer anyway and make it more CO2.
There are other reasons, and there always have been reasons. The planet will always get warmer and colder. There are hot periods and cold periods. However, the science is very clear. This gas traps heat. And so therefore it's almost primary school maths. If you add a gas that traps heat in massive amounts to the atmosphere, it causes consequences which you're now seeing unfolding.
Water vapour traps heat also.
Yes.
Also. And there's much more. We produce much more in the way of water vapour, but nobody's demonising water vapour.
There are many global warming gases. They vary from carbon dioxide, hydrocarbons, water vapour, etc. All of them trap carbon to a certain extent. However, so for example, carbon dioxide is around rated 25. Methane is 100 times more powerful. Fluorocarbons are thousands of times more powerful. However, the biggest amount of additional gases causing climate change are actually carbon dioxide.
How much carbon dioxide do you want to see as a proportion of the atmosphere? I think at the moment it's around the 400 mark, which is amongst the lowest levels it's been at in the last 50 million years. Where should it be for what you would regard as optimum life survival on Earth?
The carbon dioxide currently is at a 800,000 year high. What we need to see it is actually roughly in the middle of the 19th century, which is 3.3. In the 19th century, it was 280. The scientists regard the danger zone as 350. So I'm not proposing we take it back to the 19th century, but if we can take it back to the middle of the 20th century at 350, we might avoid the danger.
Andrew, how do you react?
Well, what I love about this debate is we're going to shine more light, less heat. It was interesting talking to Ben earlier, and I asked him the question, to what extent has humanity contributed? Because that's the question, isn't it? He did agree that there has been some sort of contribution. The question is quantum. So when you quote about 800,000 years, I would first of all say, how do we know that? Because I'm not a scientist, as we admit at the very beginning. What we need to do is work out, where's the common ground?
Well, that's very easy. The science, if you want to know where the science came from, is actually scientists went to the Arctic, which were there thousands and thousands of years of ice records, and you drill down 2 miles, and you pull it up, and you look at the amount of CO2 at every metre. And that's how they're able to tell the history of CO2 on this planet.
So what do you say to people who say, look, hang about, throughout history, the planet's been warmed and so on and so forth, with Neil in his monologue at the beginning. What do you say to them?
It's true. The planet has heated and got cooled. Well, what we haven't done is we've actually, as humans, thrown the equivalent of 1 million years of stored carbon every year into the atmosphere. So we are very, very fast changing the chemical composition of the atmosphere. And the chemical atmosphere of the chemical composition of the atmosphere has always changed. But the consequences are terrifying. They happen over millions of years.
Yes.
What we are doing is over decades.
So your common ground is that humanity has contributed. Is the disagreement as to the quantum of that contribution?
The disagreement is actually is whether or not we take action.
Okay.
And I would argue that's the problem. There is you talked about in your intro about the debate being shut down. I experience it quite differently. I look at the British media and I see the Telegraph, the Mail, the Sun, the Express, GB News, and Talk TV, almost all fighting climate action. And I feel very, very despairing because actually I think the future of this country is at stake. I look at the science, and the science predicted that if you add carbon, it gets hotter, and if it gets hotter, we get consequences such as...
Does it though? I mean, 150 million years ago, you know, the temperature fell dramatically on the planet at the same time that levels of CO2 spiked dramatically. You know, and so, and during the Eocene thermal maximum, right, when the temperature was higher than any time in the last 500 million years, the CO2 had been on a downward track at that point for 150 million years. So rising, the planet getting warmer and the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere doesn't correlate in the way that you're saying that it necessarily does.
There are many, many impacts on the temperature and on climate. What is irrefutable is basic physics, is that if you actually measure the amount of heat coming through a gas, the carbon dioxide traps it. Now, then the argument is, should we actually stop burning fossil fuels? In my view, should we take that gamble with future generations? The science will say there's a 1% chance. It will always say there's a 1% chance, 5% chance that the settled science is wrong. Always does that. But would you get on a plane that has a 95% chance of crashing?
Oh, it's an interesting point. And what I love about this is that you talk about not having the discussion is taking place. A lot of the people go too far. People like Just Stop Oil actually alienate a lot of people as a result of the actions they take. Whereas if you have a sensible discussion about it and say, look, these are the steps you need to take to make that make sense, what steps should we take and what difference will it actually make?
Well, what Just Stop Oil has a very simple demand, which says stop investing in new fossil fuels to add to the problem and invest instead in energy efficiency, in renewables and storage. I mean, I think you're a futurist.
Yes, absolutely.
I predicted 25 years ago, when I installed the first solar panels in London into my house, that in 20, 30 years, the role of an energy company would be to manage energy, not produce it. So I've got to a stage where my bills for my house are minus £100 a year.
Very good.
I don't have a gas bill. My water bill is £100 and my electricity bill is minus £250. So for most of the year, I've imported nothing, morning, noon and night, because I've got batteries and solar panels. Is that not something we would want for, working class people?
Absolutely. Very good from an economic point of view. And you should have, basically, you should make sure you insulate, because that will work on that sort of basis as well.
Before I'll lose you because of time, what about the argument that, James Lovelock, he of the Gaia argument, he has recanted to some extent and now speculates, or at least allows for the possibility, that we might be the saviours of the planet by releasing more CO2. That what we should be doing is actually increasing actively the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere because of the greening that it would enable Gaia, or the planet, to perform.
I don't know.
A more robust, more fertile planet would be good for all of us.
I don't know where you got that from, James Lovelock. James Lovelock, bless him, has died. He's departed. But the quote, I actually read a quote today from James Long, and it was actually the other extreme that he was saying, that in his view that we are potentially past the safe zone, that we are inversible. And so therefore we are on a balance whether or not we have a chance of surviving. Now, if I'm correct that 95% of science saying that I am correct is true, surely the patriotic thing to do is to take action and actually invest in a renewable, low-energy economy that actually people can have warm homes and low bills, and we save the planet.
Have to leave that conversation there simply because we've run out of time. But